Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and I'm also a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I want to talk about challenging an avoidant so that they can really understand their attachment for you, but also so that the relationship is not where you're tiptoeing around them and they're just receiving all of these things that sometimes they don't even need or want. And the reason why that dynamic is so challenging, first of all, it's really common. But second is because you're giving an avoidant something that they don't fully need. And so they lack getting attached to you, right? Because as we know, a lot of people get attached when they put investment. And so I'll explain why this can be challenging. You are challenging yourself and you're tiptoeing around them, right? So you're challenging yourself. You're getting more invested. They're not challenging themselves. They're already less invested because of their attachment style in the beginning. And now the investment is getting more and more imbalanced because as you challenge yourself or you tiptoe around them, suppress whatever you're doing, you are getting more invested in them and they're staying exactly where they are because they're not challenged. And so it just becomes even more imbalanced. And so this is why this is very important. So how do you challenge an avoidant without it, pushing them away? Because you're not supposed to challenge people that makes them uncomfortable. But all of us, we want to change and grow in relationships and healthy relationships and secure relationships. That happens. And so the first one is confronting narratives, okay? You want to directly name some of the narratives they construct about your needs or who you are. Okay. So the first example is, let's say they say something you do is unreasonable. Okay. That's really common. And that's something that comes up in a lot of my calls with you guys. Unreasonable. They say what you're feeling and what you want is unreasonable, or they label it as demands or something like that. Okay. So if that is something that you can relate to, this point may really fit for you. Okay. And so you may say something like, okay, I hear what you're saying is that you think what I'm saying is unreasonable. I don't think it is. Can you clarify what part of it is unreasonable so that we can get on the same page? Because from my side, I don't think it's unreasonable, because if I did, I wouldn't say it to you. You want to clarify what's going on, because if they say, well, it's because you are asking me to give up all my hobbies so I can stay home with you every single minute. Let's say that's what they say. That's not what you're saying, but the narrative in their mind has warped what you're saying. And so this is a huge reason why avoidants pull away, because they have that narrative. And so you can say, hold on. First of all, I appreciate you sharing, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I would like that next weekend we could hang out just for a couple hours. I'm not saying you can't do your hobbies. It's just one weekend. It's just for a couple hours. I didn't know that that's what you were feeling. What did I say to make you feel like that? And by doing that, you can disarm that narrative and help them to realize that maybe a lot of what they're feeling is in their head. It's slow, but it does really push that narrative away and allows the real narrative to replace it, okay? The next one is, if they claim, this is specific, but if they claim they're not enough for you, don't let that trigger you. Rather, challenge it. Challenge it by saying, well, what do you mean? What did I say that makes you feel like you're not enough? The reason I tell you this stuff is because I care. Did I say something? And maybe they'll say something like, well, you keep telling me you want us to be boyfriend and girlfriend, and I'm not in that place right now, so I can't give you what you need. And you can say, okay, I didn't know that's how you felt. It was just something that I was hoping for, but it doesn't mean that you as a whole is not what I need. I'm okay with this relationship and I appreciate it. However, that is something I'd like to touch on at one point. And so that's kind of the way to describe some of this for an example. And sorry about the pop up on my laptop. It's a notification. You probably heard that sound. But you want to match their client claim and then reframe it in a way that actually helps them to see your side. Because the reality is, a lot of you guys, when you're saying these things, you're not saying it needs to happen this moment, this second. You're just saying, this is something I want. Is it something that we can talk about? But the way you say it, and also the way they interpret it, makes it feel like, okay, this is a black or white thing. If I can't give it to you, then this relationship is over. And so they're basically saying, I'm not enough, because they're afraid to fail. But if you tell them, no, let's be realistic about it. I'm okay with meeting in the middle. What can you do? If we can't call ourselves boyfriend and girlfriend, can we be a little bit more open, text a little bit more often, have somewhere to meet in the middle? Okay, the next one is, you want to challenge their negative conceptions of marriage and relationships. And so a lot of avoidants have negative perceptions of marriage and relationships, but they don't realize, some of them don't realize that it's negative. Now, be careful with this one because there are some people who have negative perspectives of marriage and relationships and they are not avoidantly attached. And this one is challenging because some people who are like this are a person who has a victim mentality. So I want you to be careful. When an avoidant has a negative perspective of marriage, it's not in a victim sense. If you're hearing it's very victim mentality, if it's realistic and it makes sense, that's different. But if you hear them always victimizing victim mentality to basically make excuses, this is whatever it's usually lower self-esteem, to be honest, but I don't want to talk about that right now. That is not how avoidants typically talk about it. They might talk about, oh yeah, my marriage ended in divorce and it was really painful, and because of that, they might not even say really painful. Yeah, my 15-year marriage ended in divorce. I don't think I want to get married again. It's not very victim. It's very logical, but it's because they're bottling up a lot of the actual pain they felt. Okay? And so how do you challenge that? You might say, okay, I understand that happened to you, and I just want you to know that not all marriages are bad. Not all marriages are like that. You can say you can talk about a book, you can talk about research, you can talk about it in a logical way, people that you know, but you don't want to do it where you're pushing them. You can just say, I get that. I had a bad relationship myself. Let's just say, for example, you were married and you also were divorced. I'll just say, yeah, I felt that way myself. But I also remember that, my best friend, she's been married for 20 years, and I realize that, some people just have certain experiences, but I don't want to close myself off because of that. I want to one day experience stuff like that. Maybe not marriage, but a close relationship. You start meeting them, you soften the idea just a little bit, just soften a little bit. Eventually they will get more comfortable with that idea. The next one is you want to challenge their beliefs of perfection. Relationships need to be perfect. And so they might say something like, a person needs to be able to make this amount of money or this amount of this. And that's not actually a common example that avoidants will say. They might say, this is the common one. They might say something like, people should never fight. If they fight, that means there's an issue. And you can say something like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but do you think that people can have conversations without it getting into a fight? Do you think that people can have conversations that are stressful, that can be a little bit challenging? Are we allowed to agree to disagree? What's your thought about that? And you can meet them in the middle. You can get a little bit more comfortable with the idea of maybe having difficult discussions, because a lot of them have a belief about arguments, for example, where they think it's proof that maybe the relationship's going to end, or that's going to be miserable, or they're going to be unhappy for weeks because they had a really bad conversation. Avoidants have this very extreme belief, and so you can challenge it from that perspective, okay? And the last one is you want to propose a discussion, okay? If an issue arises, you can ask, can we have a conversation about this? If they shut you down, you can say something like, okay, I appreciate that. Is there another time that we can revisit it? And perhaps revisit at a later time. So an example could be, let's say you guys are arguing over the texting issue. Maybe they're like, I want to text you more often, but I'm not a good texter. And you're like, I would at least like you to try to text me once a day. That's the issue, okay? And they're saying, okay, I hear you, but I'm getting really overwhelmed. I can't do this. I don't want to talk about this. They shut it down. You can say, okay, I can appreciate that. Can we revisit this another time? Maybe in a couple months, maybe in a couple weeks. They might say yes, they might say no, but whatever they say, and this is the part that a lot of people get confused about because they think it's disrespectful, and I get it, but they are triggered. And so they may say no, they may say yes, but it's in their trigger. But the reason why you ask them is not to take what they're saying entirely seriously because it's a trigger, but you want to let them be comfortable to be collaborative. So let's just say they say, no, I don't want to talk about it. Or they say, I don't care what you do, something of that sort. You can say, okay, I appreciate that. But I still want you to try to revisit it later and see if they change their tune a little bit. Because if they do, this is a good sign that they were triggered. If they don't, then it might be a sign that there's still some rapport that needs to be built. But when you revisit it, try and pick a time where they're a little bit more calm, and likely when you feel like you guys are getting closer. And so these are some ways to challenge an avoidant. Overall, it's just confronting the narrative. You want to kind of clarify when they say you're not enough. You want to challenge their negative conceptions of marriage, and also challenge their beliefs of perfection, and then propose discussions if needed. I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.